Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase. Today is October 5th, 2022, and with us this evening is Chelmsford's town moderator, Mr. Jon Kurland. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for having me.
John is no stranger. We've had him on a few times, and usually we get John on just before a session of town meeting, just to kind of go over what the ground rules are, explain to folks what a town meeting is, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And John, as you probably remember, we usually start the show with the guest giving us a little bit of a biographical sketch. So why don't you do that, and then we'll get into the discussion.
Well, I'm an attorney in town, having practiced for 45 plus years now. I've served in the town as a member of the Finance Committee for about 8 years. Then I was elected to the Board of Selectmen, as they were called back then,
Yes.
for one term. And then I decided not to run again, and took a year off and then ran for moderator, and I've been moderator ever since. That's
Has it
pretty
been
much
that long, really?
Yeah.
Boy. Yeah, oh, I guess it has. Wow, time just zooms by, especially as you get older, I find. Well, you certainly have a very good background for the moderator's position, and I know you and I have talked about this before, but just a personal belief that I have. I think it's a good thing if your moderator is an attorney. I think it's a good background for a moderator to have, even though we have the town's attorney sitting next to you, and able to respond to any legal questions that come up. So that's great. So anyway, what we've got coming up is what people refer to as the fall session of the annual town meeting. Is that correct? Is
Right.
that the correct way to describe it? So maybe
is.
you could explain that a little bit, why we describe it that way.
Well, we have two town meetings. There are some communities that only have one, but we have two. The spring town meeting is essentially the money town meeting, where for the most part we do budget issues and we deal with all of the financial ramifications, Neshoba Tech, school committee, the municipal budget. Occasionally there will be some zoning bylaws. This past spring there were none, which made it a more expeditious
Yes.
process. And in the fall we generally do zoning issues. We do some small budgetary things to wind up. There are sometimes changes. There are sometimes situations where money has, free cash, for example, will be dealt with in town meeting. What we do with the money that was left over from the prior fiscal year, if there is any, and fortunately we do have some,
Yes.
so that we'll deal with that. And they're frequently routine, essentially administrative things that the town should approve. And town meeting is the legislative board. They approve what should be done, and then it's up to the executive board, which would be the select board, town manager, to implement the regulations and the laws that we have passed.
And that's a very good explanation. I'm going to pick up on something you said about the town meeting being the legislative body of the town. So just very, very quickly for people out watching who may not understand these distinctions. In the Massachusetts local government structure, there are several forms of municipal government. And cities and towns are basically free to choose which one they want. So you have two kinds of cities, Plan A, Plan E. Then you have town government, which is what we are. And you can have either a town that has an open town meeting form, or you can have a representative town meeting form. In an open town meeting form, every registered voter in the town can go to the town meeting and they can participate fully. They can speak, they can make motions, and they can vote. In the case of a representative town meeting, any citizen of the town can go and participate up to the point of making motions and voting. They can do anything else.
Right.
They can get up, they can speak. You have to identify yourself by address. You can speak on any issue, and you can actually make an amendment, but if you want to do that, you have to get one of your town meeting reps to do that for you. But other than that, and the town meeting is, in fact, the legislative body of the town. and the warrants that are presented are the legislative agenda for that particular time period. Have I said all that correctly?
Pretty much.
All right, good. Well, if I didn't, he would tell me, so that's okay.
And Chelmsford has a representative town meeting. Interestingly enough, town meeting is considered, at least in the United States, the first pure form of representative government, where the members of the town generally could go in and then they would vote on how the town would be run. The first town that actually created what at the time was called a limited town meeting, and we now call it a representative town meeting, was Brookline in 1915.
I did not know that that was the original term. That's
Yes.
very interesting.
Limited town meeting, now it's called representative. And we have 165 representatives from the 11 precincts in the town. And, you know, they serve 3-year terms in a staggered situation. And it's worked so far, so good.
Now, do you ever recall a situation where we were unable to obtain a quorum? And what would a quorum be for 165?
It would be, well, it would be 183, actually.
So a
I mean,
half,
83.
A half plus one,
Yeah,
basically?
83.
Okay. All right, so that's good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, just generally, how it works and what exactly is the moderator's role in the town meeting?
Okay, so, so the way it works is that there is a warrant, which is a list of articles that are going to be presented at town meeting, and they have to be posted and served in accordance with the law. That is done by our town constable, Paul Erickson, and I have to make sure that it's been done properly. And then those articles are presented to the elected representatives of the town who are going to be representing their specific precinct. These articles are presented by what we call the presenter. More often than not, it is the town manager. Sometimes it might be someone from the planning board. It might be someone from the community preservation.
Depending on what the article is.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and there are citizens' petitions that are presented occasionally by the citizens who have presented the petition, and anybody can file a petition. It's got to meet the legal qualifications.
Which are?
Well, which are approved by the attorney. So,
Okay.
because I mean, you know, it could be anything. It could be anything. So, what we always recommend is if you've got an article that you want to present to town meeting, have town council approve it first. If there are some technical issues, town council will generally provide guidance on how to make it so that it reads and is in the form appropriate, because whatever we pass has to go to the Attorney General's office and be approved by the Attorney General. So
That's a very good point, folks. So if the town meeting passes an article, it does not become effective until it is reviewed by the Attorney General and they have to bless it, basically.
yes, and I cannot remember a situation where we had a problem. I'm sure that over
I can't either. Yeah.
but I have, obviously, as an attorney, I've read cases where there have been problems.
Right.
And so it's very important that, you know, we have capable town council who is making sure that that the warrant article's in appropriate form. And
Now, is there any charge for that, or the town
Well-
council will, I mean, the town,
Well,
there's a
the
charge
town
to
council
town,
won't- yeah, the
but
town
I'm
council
I'm
won't-
talking to the town meeting rep that wants to, or the presenter, or whoever wants to present a warrant article.
no,
Okay,
I've never seen a situation
So that's
where
not a gating factor. So if you want
Right.
to do that, folks, don't worry that you're going to get a bill from town council.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not aware of it ever
Yeah,
happening.
I don't think so, but just want to
So-
make sure.
Yeah. So town meeting is regulated by certain rules. They are not Robert's rules in Chelmsford, although some towns do follow Robert's rules of procedure and order. Ours are sort of a mix of different rules. They are published that you can get on the town website as to, you know, how different motions are addressed and what is necessary to advance a particular amendment, for example, or to even pass a warrant article. Some warrant articles require 2/3 vote. Most require a simple majority. If we wanted to invade the stabilization fund, for example, you would need 2/3 of the town meeting reps to use money that has been set aside in the stabilization fund, because we don't want that money to be readily accessible unless it really is something that...
That's a very good point. A lot of towns, and even towns that are very financially well off, they do not have stabilization funds. They keep their undesignated fund balance in free cash, and that's a very good point. So if town meeting wants to liberate any of that money, it's a majority. It's half plus one vote. If it's stabilization, you have to hit the 2/3.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's important for our bond rating.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is the the bond rating for the town. Having a good bond rating saves the taxpayers a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yes, it does.
And fortunately, over the past decade or so, even with the ups and downs of the economy, our bond rating has improved to the best that I believe it's ever been. So
We're at the highest level we've ever been. That is correct. We're one step from the AAA rating. So that's yeah, and you're right. Even one gradation makes a huge difference.
Right.
In the cost of borrowing money. So that is important. So I think you've given a pretty good overview. Now let's talk about. And this is something that I'm very interested in, because essentially you introduced this when you became moderator, because I don't recall we ever did this before. It was the consent agenda.
Right.
Okay, so take a minute and explain what that is and how it works.
Sure. Well, one of the things I've tried to do is make it a more time-sensitive and more representative-friendly situation, because we're asking people to come and donate their time. They're all volunteers. And if I can do something to save them time, to me that's valuable. And the way the response I've had to the consent agenda indicates that they appreciate it. What we do is, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of sort of routine warrant articles that have to come before the board and have to be the town meeting and have to be approved in order for certain administrative tasks that are required to be performed are performed. So
normally, wouldn't those generally come at the in the first part of the warrant? I mean, I know that there's been some variation on that. But
right, there have.
Speaking,
Paul Cohen and I have talked about it, because if you recall, when we first started to implement it, it might be 2 or 3 at the beginning, and then a couple in the middle, and 1 or 2 at the end. And we try to get the consent agenda as close to being at the beginning of the meeting, so that we can dispose of a lot of articles in one vote. Each article is presented separately. And if someone wants...
it's a full presentation that would be made if the article were not included in the consent.
Right. This way, anybody who is a town meeting rep or watching on television, a citizen who wants to know what we're voting on, they understand what we're voting on. And the town meeting reps do have the right to remove articles from the consent agenda if they feel as though it would be more appropriate to take it as a separate article.
Has that ever been done?
It has not yet.
No, I didn't think so. Okay.
No. I mean, we try to be careful about it.
Oh, sure.
So
your track record at guessing is pretty good.
Well, the town manager and I work on it. As a matter of fact, we did have a disagreement on an article.
Really?
Yeah. In this one, which had to do with the Oddfellows Brook easement. And I said, we really shouldn't have that in the consent agenda. It probably will pass, but it's not the usual thing that our town meeting rep deal with.
Ultimately, it's your call, right? You're the moderator.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Fortunately, I have a fair amount of discretion.
That's good. And for those folks who may not know, the moderator is an elected position. So if you're a voter in Chelmsford, you have the opportunity to elect a moderator. So reporting directly to the people, really, is what I'm saying, if you're an elected official.
Absolutely.
Okay? So this isn't, moderator isn't a bureaucrat, he isn't appointed by the town manager, he's elected directly from the people. I think that's a very important thing, and while I am thinking about that, and I didn't have it on our little outline here, but what is the one other very important function that the moderator does?
I appoint the Finance Committee.
Yes.
So,
Talk about that a little bit.
well, I think that, different towns do it differently.
Oh, yes.
Some finance committees are elected, and some are appointed.
35, I think, was my last count.
Well, you keep better track of it
Out of
than I do.
300, well, of course, not everything is a town, but out of all the towns in Massachusetts, it's 35. Last count was 35 are elected. So it's a small number. Tingsboro elects their FinCom.
And some are
Yep.
appointed by the select board or the town manager, or a combination of a number of different people. I like the fact, not because I'm moderator, but Finance Committee should be completely independent. They should not be subject to the whims of the political interests that are prevalent at a particular moment in time. When I was on the Finance Committee, and you were the chairman, actually, when I first came on, if I recall
Yes,
correctly.
that is correct.
We tried to be very forward-looking, and if there was a situation where there was a clamor for some, expenditure that we felt was not in the best long-term interest of the town, we voted as a Finance Committee against it, because it was a political thing, and it was not, so the Finance Committee being independent is very important, and each member of the Finance Committee serves a 3-year term. I don't know why everything is 3-year terms in our town, but it seems to be, and it's on a staggered basis as well. So every 3 years, I will look at the 1 or 2 members of the Finance Committee and reappoint them.
Yeah, 7-member committee.
Right.
In some towns, it's, I don't think I've ever seen a town where it's less than 7, but there are towns.
Small towns, small towns.
Are there? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. I've seen 9, and in Concord, it's 15. I can't even imagine trying to get through that meeting.
In some of the smaller communities, the Finance Committee actually prepares the town budget.
Correct. And it's usually, it will be in those towns where you don't have the so-called strong town manager form of government.
Right.
Okay. The FinCom is the budgetary authority for that town, and they prepare the budget. So, yep, that is correct. Yeah, yeah. So that's a very important job that the moderator has, is to appoint the FinCom. And I can tell you, and you went through the process, and of course now you're administering the process, but I remember when I first was appointed to the FinCom, Dennis McHugh was the moderator. And I applied, and he called up and said, well, you have to come in and do an interview with me. And I thought, well, this isn't going to take any time at all. Well, that interview lasted 2.5 hours, so I said, boy, this man really takes this job seriously. And he did, and I know you do as well. You make very sure that people are properly vetted and have the correct qualifications to serve on a FinCom. So,
Not to tell tales out of school,
yep.
but Dennis and I go back quite a ways as attorneys. I've known him for a long time. And there was a period of time when Dennis and I were actually golf partners in the golf league.
Yes.
Before I was elected to selectman. That's when I had to leave the golf league. And I had done a lot of charitable, board volunteer work, and I really wanted to do something for the town, but I was extremely apolitical. I did not follow town politics at all, other than to vote. I would pay attention then. So I asked Dennis. I said, Dennis, you're involved in town politics. I said, what board do you think I would do a decent job where my talents would be appreciated? He says, well, there's an opening on the Finance Committee.
There you go.
And I knew nothing about that. You and your wife had dinner with my wife,
Yep.
and you had said that you were on the Finance Committee, and I had no idea what you were talking about at the time.
I think I was chair at that time.
Could have been.
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, sure, Dennis, what's involved in that? He says, you meet once a month and, not a lot of heavy
And
lifting.
you got to put up with that son of a gun chase.
Oh, no, he didn't say that. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And I went to my very first meeting, and, you have to get sworn in.
Yep.
And I was sworn in, and I went to my first meeting. I said, so when's our next meeting? And they looked at me and said, next week.
Yep.
So Dennis pulled one on me, but I didn't regret it at all.
And you served well, and you did you had some time as chairman
yes,
as
I
well.
was chairman
Yep.
for a number of years.
So anyway, that's a very important thing. Well, we have, I don't know, about 9 minutes left, and I thought maybe we'd spend just a little bit of time maybe highlighting some of the articles that are going to be put before the town meeting on the, what is it, the 17th?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
first night.
Is that earlier than normal? That seems earlier to me. Must be how the
No,
calendar lies.
it's just the third Monday of the
Okay, so
month.
it's the third Monday, all right. So,
Actually, we're going to be starting, the 17th will start at the regular time. The 20th, which will be the second night, will be, we're starting a minute earlier because we have a special town meeting
special,
on
yes,
that.
we do. Yes, we do. Okay. So are there any articles that, I'm going to let you go first. Is there anything that you would like to specifically call the viewers' attention to?
Well, the consent agenda will consist of Articles 2 through 9 and 16, which are, again, very routine, transferring cemetery funds
Yeah.
to the appropriate,
That's 9 articles.
yeah.
That should speed things up.
Yeah. And unpaid bills from the prior fiscal year, obviously, we have to take care of that. And different routine stabilization funds for like the sewer construction or affordable housing. We just address them as a matter of course. Outside of that, and number 16 is a historical property inventory program.
Yes.
Which should not be anything that will
So
be.
generally, these aren't
They're not
terribly
controversial.
Right.
No, they're not
Okay.
controversial at all. I know that there's Article 17 and 18 have to do with seniors. One will be to address the senior tax work-off program. And, we do that so that members, seniors who live in the town can get a tax break on their real estate taxes. The amount that is suggested to fund that program is $100,000. And what happens is if you are a senior and you want to avail yourself of that program, for a certain number of hours, you can get a reduction. I think it's about $850, isn't it now? Wasn't it? It was $750 at one point. I think it's up to $850.
I'm an assessor, and I should know that number off the top of my head, and just right now, it's escaping me, but it's in that general vicinity.
Right.
That's correct.
So that's a real savings, and the work they do is work that needs to be done for the benefit of the town in any event. So that's a good program. And the other one is to provide that the number 18 to increase the exemption for the seniors from $500 a year to $1,000.
That is the so-called, those clauses of state law, those refer generally to hardship exemptions. That's what they're called.
Right.
And I can tell you, this is just my personal opinion, this thing is long overdue, because I can't even tell you how many years the exemption has been $500. So if we look at the effects of inflation over the last, well, let's see, I've been on the board, 14 years, and it was $500 14 years ago, and it was $500 before then. So I think we are way past due for an adjustment.
Well, obviously, I cannot comment on that because I
You
am
cannot.
completely
You
neutral
have to be
on
neutral.
these things.
But if I were advocating in town meeting, I would say that. So, yeah, so I think that's long overdue, and I hope the town meeting passes that.
Yeah. The most interesting one, I think, will be Article 20, which is to remove the deputy fire chief from
Yes.
civil service. And I know that this is something that you're interested in as well. And basically, There are reasons why the town wants to do this, and maybe it would be best if you explain them, because
All
you
right.
know them better than I do.
Well, again, as I understand it, the proposal is being made to allow, well, let me just back up a minute. Within the fire department, all the positions in the fire department are under civil service, except for the chief, okay? So, the article is proposed to remove the deputy chief's position from civil service. So the deputy chief in the fire department is the number 2 position. He's the second in command, okay? And the rationale behind that, it's basically management rationale, okay? Which says the person in charge ought to be able to have a relatively free hand in selecting the second in command, because they have to work very, very closely together. Now, this concept is not even debatable in the private sector. Isn't even debatable, okay? But in the public sector, where you're dealing with unionization and you're dealing with civil service, it is debatable, okay? And there are strong arguments on both sides for keeping it civil service and taking it out. But as I understand it, the Select Board has placed a high priority on a process that they refer to as succession planning. So what they've done is they have tasked the town manager, and I understand, I think it's actually in his goals, okay? They have tasked the town manager with implementing succession planning in all of our departments. So if you're going to do succession planning, it's very, very difficult if your second in command is under civil service, okay? And so the idea is you take this out of civil service, and it gives the fire chief a lot more latitude in selecting from the candidates within the department as to who the second in command is going to be. Now, it was done in the police department, I cannot remember how many years ago. I was I may have been on the finance committee at the time, that's how long it was. But the town took the deputy police chief out of civil service a long time ago. And I think if you look at the succession of chiefs that we've had in town since that time, all very good chiefs and high-quality people. I'm talking Ray McCusker, Jim Murphy, and Jim Spinney, okay? And they benefited from the succession planning that was in place there, and the fact that the chief could essentially designate who the second in command was going to be. So it's worked out very, very well there, and I think that's what's driving this amendment. Now, I want to be fair to the other side. There are very, very strong arguments for leaving it in civil service. And,
Right.
And at that point, it really becomes a matter of philosophy. How do you feel about it, okay? So I don't think there's really a right or a wrong. It basically comes down to your philosophy of how public departments ought to be managed and administered. That's how I would describe it. So, we want to be fair to both sides. And so I think that's going to be a very, very interesting argument on town meeting.
Yeah, that's the one that intrigues me the most.
Yes,
that's on the
I
warrant.
agree. And then the other thing I think that's going to be perhaps controversial are the 3 citizen petition articles that come after it on the zoning. And this relates to the designation of a new designation that's proposed under the zoning laws for a 24/7 distribution center. Right now, our bylaws don't recognize that as a use. It stops at warehousing.
Right.
Okay. So that, I think, is going to be a very lengthy, spirited argument
I agree.
on those 3. So how many, we've got about 50 seconds. So based on the totality of what you have before you, make a prediction. How many nights?
2 with a possible rollover to
He
a
says
third.
2, folks. Okay, I don't know.
I haven't been
I don't
wrong
know.
too much,
We'll
but
see.
there's a possibility we'll have to come back on the third, third night.
For maybe a spillover
Yeah,
type thing. And generally, we shut the thing down at 11 o'clock.
we do. I mean, if there's a chance that we can wrap it up on
Yep.
the second night and stay until 11:30 or something like that, we generally, the board, the town meeting will do it.
Well, guess what? We're out of time, so I am very glad that we had you on. You gave a very good explanation and overview, and we'll have you back the next time.